Jurassic Park, calling it one of the biggest films of the. I feel like I've already done this intro. For those of you who haven't seen my last video, this is the second part into my dive for the Jurassic Park movies as an excuse to talk about cool sciencey things and dinosaurs. I suppose I can give you a quick synopsis of what went on in those videos, but I do highly recommend going back and checking them out because they're full of a lot of good information. Last time we covered CRISPR, Cas9, and how they're used in genetic engineering, the limitations of DNA in an application like Jurassic Park, a number of different projects attempting to resurrect extinct animals like the mammoth and the thylacine, and lastly, we talked about a project by Jack Horner in attempts to make a chicken into a dinosaur. There was also a lot of mentions of the number 2, and if you didn't catch it, that was the number of books originally written by Michael Crichton and the number of good Jurassic Park sequels. Hey, what was that about turning a chicken into a dinosaur? Don't worry about that. We will be getting back around to it before the end of this video because there's a lot that chickens have to do with dinosaurs and the main topic of this video, which would be what again? Well, the keen-minded amongst you probably would remember it was about how dinosaurs were portrayed in the movie. For everyone who just sighed because you think I'm going to be doing an in-depth on each individual dinosaur and explaining how they're wrong, you can take a bit of relief in knowing that I'm not going to do that here. Do it later. Even though it tried not to, Jurassic Park perpetuated a lot of myths and bad science that is associated with dinosaurs. And to get an understanding of this, we're going to have to go all the way back to where it all began. I have just been informed that time travel is not in the budget, and apparently travel to the Triassic is considered to be a safety hazard. It's a good thing we didn't need to go back that far anyways. Finding fossils is something that humans have been doing since time immemorial. In fact, it's probably something you can do right now. If you live in the circled part of the US and you can go out and find a road excavation near some hills or an area just outside a major town and probably find some ranging from seashells, ammonites, mosasaurs, trackways, and a number of dinosaurs. That's because this area used to be part of the ocean called the Western Interior Seaway. And if you just did that, congratulations! You're following the footsteps of a large number of people from the past who made significant discoveries about our planet and its ever-changing geology and ecology. But most importantly, you're following in the footsteps of this person. Mary Anning, born May 21st, 1799, was an English fossil collector and paleontologist who made significant discoveries in Jurassic marine fossil beds in Dorset County of southwest England. It wouldn't be hard to say that her discoveries kickstarted a revolution in scientific thinking about prehistoric life and the history of Earth. Unfortunately, because she was a woman in the 1800s, a lot of her discoveries were either attributed to her husband, stolen, or outright ignored. But this didn't stop her from being an important figure in the world of paleontology, often directly influencing and aiding the people who would later go on to publish some of the most significant of discoveries. And it's here in the 17 and 1800s that we could start to talk about the problems with how the public sees dinosaurs. Most of the early interpretations of dinosaurs look something like this. Sorry, that is clearly an otter. Like this. Like this. If you're saying that's clearly a lizard, then you would be correct. And that's how a lot of dinosaurs were seen by the public in the better part for 2 centuries. There is a reason they tell you not to work with kids or animals. The reason the public largely believes that dinosaurs to be nothing more than giant lizards is because of this place right here, the Crystal Palace in London. They put on display in the early 1850s reconstructions of dinosaurs that were based off of some of the earliest of works from paleontologists, and they remain on display to this day. The models are highly inaccurate to the different species that they are supposed to be displaying and show off a lot of the problems with early in paleontology and the reconstructions that came from it. With this really being the beginning of paleontology as a field, every discovery from this point on was significant. And a lot of them changed how the scientific community viewed, described, and reconstructed prehistoric animals. But that didn't stop the image of a slow moving, cold blooded, lizard like dinosaur from being the major image that most people had from being the most popular. Even the shift to a lot of dinosaurs being bipedal didn't stop this interpretation and can be seen from the early era of films with things like this. That all started to change in the 1960s with the advent of the dinosaur renaissance, spearheaded by John Ostrom and his student Robert Bakker, who happened to be mentioned a number of times in various ways throughout the Jurassic Park films. The dinosaur renaissance aimed to once again revolutionize our understanding of dinosaurs, their evolution, and how they are seen by the public. Robert Bakker advocated fiercely that dinosaurs were active, warm-blooded, and intelligent creatures in ways that were similar to modern mammals and birds. When you imagine the fast-moving raptors or the ferocious hunting T-Rex, that's an image that wouldn't have existed without his work. But this renaissance wouldn't have kicked off without the work of Ostrom. In the late 1800s, shortly after the publication of Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species, the connection between birds and dinosaurs was first established by Thomas Huxley, citing the recently discovered Archaeopteryx and its similarities with modern birds. This connection was wrongly thrown out of the accepted ideas with the book The Origin of Birds in 1926, in which it was argued that birds evolved from crocodilomorphs and other early archosaurs. I'm going to level with you here for a second and say that you'd be easily forgiven if you looked at this guy and you said that there is no way it's related to a chicken. But the same can be said for this guy. This idea of bird evolution lasted up until 1964, when Ostrom discovered Deinonychus. It was the similarities between its skeleton and the skeleton of modern birds that led him to the conclusion that Huxley was right nearly 100 years prior. And while specimens like like Velociraptor had been known prior to this discovery, there was never really any detailed looks into it to make the connections. If we take a good hard look at the skeletons of modern birds and the Menaraptorans that include things like Deinonychus and Velociraptor, the similarities between them become apparent. So much so that the cladograms for them look like this. Birds are the only group of living dinosaurs on the planet. And if you were curious, that does technically make birds a type of reptile. I might have to make a video about that explaining it in the future. So if you're not subscribed and you want to see that, go ahead and hit that button down there. It'll let me know that you want to see it. Which finally brings us back around to the Chickenosaurus. Well, I suppose it isn't really fair to say that we're finally getting around to it, because I've effectively been telling you about why it works the entire time. Now I just need to tell you about how it works. If you remember from the video I did about otter evolution, I quickly glossed over that we know things about their evolution through genetic analysis, but I didn't really get into explaining it. One of the things that we can do is tell when certain traits are changed or lost. And all of those traits show up in the genome of a creature, regardless of them actually still having them or not. It's because you can't grow out of your phylogeny. Once a dinosaur, always a dinosaur. That means that humans are still monkeys and that all living creatures with a backbone are fish. And with the chicken, we've been able to pinpoint the parts of the genome that determine if it grows traits you'd expect to see in an extinct dinosaur, like a tail or a snout. And all it takes is using a a certain protein sequence or a chemical signal in order to turn those genes back on. If you made it this far into the video, you're probably asking yourself, didn't he say he was going to talk about how dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are portrayed wrong? And to that I say, haven't you realized that I kind of did that? There are several dinosaurs in the film that are mostly portrayed accurately, and with the exception of the T-Rex, they're all herbivores. And there are times where in the movie it goes out of its way to make a connection between dinosaurs and the evolution of birds. You remember the 6-foot turkey, or Tim talking about the books he reads, or the part with the Gallimimus. Even the ways in which the dinosaurs act are inspired by birds. And yet you almost certainly still look at them in the movie and think, oh, it's just a big lizard. Why is that? It's because the film did nothing to dispel that image of dinosaurs. Arguably, the key dinosaur in the movie is the raptor, which even at the time that they made the film, they knew they had feathers and was far more avian than the public would even understand. They actually did quite well in the Jurassic World film by trying to explain a lot of this.
You are acting like we are engaged in some kind of mad science, but we are doing what we have done from the beginning. Nothing in Jurassic World is natural. We have always filled gaps in the genome with the DNA of other animals. And if their genetic code was pure, many of them would look quite different, but you didn't ask for reality. You asked for more teeth.
I never asked for a monster.
Monster is a relative term. To a canary, a cat is a monster.
The movies rely on the public's idea of what a dinosaur is rather than what they actually are, which reinforces stereotypes that the dinosaur renaissance actively fought to dispel. The original books are meant to serve as a warning about the dangers of using science in an unrestrained manner, in the same view as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But it also happens to give us another interesting question to ask. What happens when you fail to rein in the bad science? It runs rampant in the public like a monster cobbled together from lizards, birds, and movie magic. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Be sure to keep an eye on the channel because I've got a couple more videos that'll be coming out relatively soon about some of the specific dinosaurs throughout the film that I just took a little bit of a particular issue with and decided it'd be fun to make some small little content to go alongside with this film. So, until those come out, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.